Dive into the captivating story of Carol Grace, a woman whose early life in the 1920s New York City was a roller coaster of grit and mystery. Born in the bustling, chaotic heart of Manhattan's Lower East Side, Carol's childhood was shaped by the vibrant immigrant culture and the stark challenges of poverty. From the crowded tenements filled with Yiddish melodies to the shadow of a rumored Hollywood connection, her journey is one of resilience and intrigue. What secrets did her teenage mother Roisin carry as she navigated the harsh realities of immigrant life? How did a young girl shuffled through foster homes rise above hardship to forge her own path? This video uncovers the untold details of Carol's formative years, revealing how the struggles of her youth became the spark for a remarkable life. Packed with historical insights and emotional depth, this story will keep you hooked. Hit that play button to explore a tale of survival, mystery, and the unbreakable spirit of a woman who turned adversity into art. Don't miss out. Subscribe, like, and share to join us on this fascinating journey through history. Childhood and background: 1924-1933. On September 11, 1924, Carol Grace was born in the heart of Manhattan's Lower East Side, a neighborhood that thrummed with the dreams and struggles of immigrants in New York City. Her arrival marked the beginning of a life shaped by a complex interplay of cultural richness, personal hardship, and remarkable resilience. The Lower East Side was a vibrant, crowded mosaic of humanity, where tenement buildings loomed over narrow streets, housing families from Eastern Europe, Italy, Ireland, and beyond, all drawn to America's promise of a better future. For Jewish immigrants like Carol's family, who traced their roots to Russia, this enclave was a cultural anchor, alive with the sounds of Yiddish conversations, the clatter of push carts selling everything from pickled fish to bolts of cloth, and the solemn chants echoing from synagogues tucked between storefronts. The air carried the mingled scents of freshly baked rye bread, simmering coolant, and the faint tang of coal smoke from tenement stoves. Yet beneath this vivid cultural tapestry lay a grimmer reality. Overcrowding was severe, with families of 6, 8, or more crammed into 1- or 2-room apartments, sharing a single bathroom down a dimly lit hallway. Sanitation was abysmal, with garbage rotting in alleys and rats scurrying through tenement basements. Diseases like tuberculosis and diphtheria thrived in such close quarters, claiming lives with alarming frequency. The economic strain of the 1920s, teetering on the edge of the Great Depression's catastrophic arrival in 1929, pushed parents into backbreaking jobs in garment factories or construction sites, often leaving children to navigate the streets alone, dodging petty thieves or street gangs. For a newborn like Carol, this environment was both a cradle of heritage and a crucible of survival, demanding strength from her earliest moments and setting the tone for a childhood that would test her in profound ways. Carol's mother, Roisin Ray Marcus, embodied the immigrant struggle, her life a saga of adaptation and endurance. Originally bearing the surname Shapiro, then Brofman, and finally Marcus, Roisin's shifting identities reflected the fluidity common among immigrants striving to blend into American society or escape the shadows of their past. She arrived in New York on August 20th, 1913, part of a massive exodus of over 2 million Eastern European Jews fleeing the Russian Empire's Pale of Settlement, where anti-Semitic pogroms, violent mob attacks on Jewish communities, and restrictive laws made daily life a precarious ordeal. These pogroms, often state-sanctioned, saw homes burned, families brutalized, and livelihoods destroyed, driving Jews to seek safety across the Atlantic. Roisin, likely a teenager herself, stepped off a steamship at Ellis Island into a city that was both a beacon of opportunity and a labyrinth of challenges. With little money, minimal English, and no recorded family support, she would have faced immediate hurdles, finding a place to sleep, securing work, and learning the unspoken rules of a bustling metropolis. Many immigrants like her found temporary shelter in boarding houses, where a single room might house a dozen people, sleeping in shifts on straw mattresses. The Lower East Side's tenements were often these first homes, with cold water flats lacking heat or indoor plumbing, where residents hauled water from street pumps and cooked on coal stoves that filled rooms with soot. Roisin likely sought work in the garment industry, a cornerstone of New York's economy and a common path for young Jewish women. Factories along Delancey or Orchard Street hummed with the clatter of sewing machines, where workers stitched shirtwaists, dresses, or men's coats for 12 to 14 hours a day, earning mere cents per piece. The 1911 Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire, which killed 146 workers, mostly young women, had exposed the industry's dangers, from locked exits to flammable conditions, yet little had changed by 1913. Roisin would have endured long shifts under harsh overseers, her hands calloused from needles and her eyes strained from dim lighting. Alternatively, she might have taken up domestic work, cleaning homes for wealthier families uptown or peddled goods on the street, a grueling life that left little time for personal aspirations. Her youth, barely out of adolescence, made her journey all the more daunting as she navigated a city that could be as unforgiving as it was promising. The most striking detail of Roisin's story is her age at Carol's birth, 16 years old. In 1924, when Carol was born, Roisin was scarcely more than a child herself, thrust into motherhood in a foreign land without the safety nets of extended family or social services. This fact underscores the vulnerability of young immigrant women in early 20th century America. Teenage pregnancies were not rare in immigrant communities, often resulting from economic necessity, early marriages arranged to secure stability, or limited access to education about contraception. However, for an unmarried mother in the conservative Jewish community of the Lower East Side, the social stigma was crushing. Neighbors might whisper behind closed doors, and religious leaders could shun unwed mothers, viewing them as a moral failing. Roisin's ability to keep Carol even for a short time before turning to foster care reflects a fierce determination to provide for her daughter despite overwhelming odds. She likely lived in a tenement, perhaps a single room with a shared kitchen, where she balanced motherhood with survival. Her days might have involved sewing until midnight, washing laundry in a communal basin, or bartering for food at the market, all while cradling an infant. The exhaustion and isolation of this life, coupled with her youth, created an unstable foundation for Carol's early years, setting the stage for the challenges that followed. Roisin's multiple name changes, Shapiro to Brofman to Marcus, reveal a pattern of reinvention, possibly tied to marriages, efforts to assimilate, or a desire to escape past associations. Each name marked a new chapter, a shedding of old burdens or an embrace of new opportunities. By 1924, when Carol was born, Roisin had adopted the surname Marcus, which would later connect her to a life of wealth. But in those early years, she was still a young woman scraping by, likely sharing a cold water flat with other families, cooking on a coal stove that doubled as a heater, and washing clothes in a sink shared by a dozen tenants. Her life revolved around survival, finding enough work to pay rent, securing food, and keeping herself and her baby safe in a neighborhood where crime, from pickpocketing to extortion, was a constant threat. This context explains why Carol's childhood was marked by upheaval. Roisin's precarious circumstances left little room for the stability a young child craves. The mystery surrounding Carol's biological father adds a layer of intrigue, blending the grit of the Lower East Side with a touch of Hollywood glamour. Roisin claimed that Carol's father was Leslie Howard, the renowned British actor whose roles in films like Gone with the Wind, 1939, where he played the refined Ashley Wilkes, and The Petrified Forest, 1936, cemented his status as a star of Hollywood's golden age. Born Leslie Howard Steiner in 1893 to Hungarian Jewish parents in London, Howard was a figure of sophistication, his cultured voice and thoughtful demeanor captivating audiences on stage and screen. His Jewish heritage connected him culturally to Roisin, and his early career brought him to New York's Broadway scene in the early 1920s, where he performed in plays like The Green Hat, 1925. This timeline makes a meeting with Roisin plausible, perhaps at a theater event, a social gathering, or through mutual acquaintances in the city's vibrant cultural circles. Roisin's claim suggests a possible affair, a fleeting romance between a young immigrant woman and a rising star before Howard's fame reached its peak. Yet this claim rests solely on Roisin's word, unbacked by any concrete evidence. Howard was married to Ruth Martin since 1916, with 2 children, Ronald and Leslie Ruth, making an extramarital affair a scandal that would have been carefully hidden to protect his burgeoning career. His tragic death in 1943, when his plane was shot down over the Bay of Biscay during the World War II, added a layer of mystique to his legacy. Some speculated his plane was targeted due to his anti-Nazi film work or rumored ties to British intelligence, though these theories remain unproven. For Roisin, claiming Howard as Carol's father might have been a way to imbue their story with a sense of grandeur, elevating their humble beginnings with a connection to a world of fame and elegance. It could also have served as a shield against the stigma of unwed motherhood, offering a narrative that deflected judgment from her community. For Carol, growing up with this unconfirmed story likely created a void in her identity, a sense of longing for a father she never knew. This gap fueled her imagination, later finding expression in her writing, where themes of absence and identity recur with poignant clarity. The instability of Carol's early years led to her placement in the foster care system, a defining chapter that lasted until she was 8, around 1932 or early 1933. Foster care in the 1920s was a fragmented system, far less structured than today's. In New York, organizations like the Hebrew Orphan Asylum, founded to serve Jewish children, or the New York Foundling Hospital for Catholic families, managed many placements, striving to maintain cultural and religious continuity. For Jewish families, community-based care was a priority, reflecting the tight-knit nature of the Lower East Side's Jewish enclave. However, limited funding and oversight meant children often ended up in overcrowded homes or with foster parents who viewed them as a source of labor. Some foster homes were warm and nurturing, offering children like Carol a semblance of family life, with home-cooked meals and bedtime stories. Others were starkly utilitarian, where children shared beds with strangers, ate sparse meals of bread and soup, and faced strict discipline for minor infractions. In some cases, foster children were expected to contribute through chores, scrubbing floors, washing dishes, or tending to younger children, or even work in family businesses, such as helping in a tailor shop or delivering goods. Carol's experience likely involved multiple placements, each bringing new faces, rules, and environments. From 1924 to 1932, she navigated a world where stability was a luxury. A foster home might have been a tenement apartment not unlike her mother's, with peeling wallpaper and a single window overlooking a noisy street. Alternatively, she could have been placed in a slightly better home in Brooklyn or the Bronx, where Jewish foster families were common, offering a modicum of comfort but still requiring children to earn their keep. Daily life might have included rising early to help with household tasks, attending a crowded public school if time allowed, and learning to adapt to the expectations of new caregivers. The emotional toll was profound. Foster children often grappled with feelings of abandonment and struggled to form lasting bonds, knowing each placement could end abruptly. The Great Depression, hitting in 1929, worsened the strain. With unemployment soaring to 25% by 1933, foster families faced their own financial pressures, sometimes taking in children for the small stipends provided by agencies like the Jewish Board of Guardians. These stipends, often a few dollars a month, were a lifeline for struggling households, but did little to ensure quality care. For Carol, these years demanded constant adaptation. She likely moved between homes, carrying a small bundle of belongings, a dress, a pair of shoes, perhaps a cherished book or toy. Each transition meant learning new household routines, from how to set the table to when to stay silent, to avoid punishment. The stigma of being a foster child followed her, as classmates or neighbors might whisper about the orphan or unwanted girl. Yet, these challenges sharpened her observational skills and resilience, traits that would define her later as an actress and writer. The ability to read people's emotions, to sense shifts in mood or intent, likely stemmed from navigating the unpredictable dynamics of foster homes, where survival often depended on quick thinking and adaptability. Changes in Life and Surname, 1933, early 1940s. In 1933, at the age of 8, Carol Grace experienced a profound transformation that reshaped her life in ways that would have seemed impossible for a child born into adversity. The marriage of her mother, Roisin, to Charles Marcus was a turning point, not only for Carol, but for her entire family, propelling them from a world of economic hardship and social stigma into the glittering opulence of Park Avenue. This was far more than a change in residence. It was a reinvention of identity, a reweaving of a family tapestry marked by secrets, resilience, and the intricate dynamics of the American dream during one of the most challenging periods in the nation's history. The years from 1933 to the early 1940s tell a story of survival, ambition, and the delicate balance between personal aspirations and societal pressures. It is a narrative that illustrates how a single event, a marriage, can send ripples through time, shaping not only the immediate circumstances but also the future of a young girl who would later navigate the realms of literature, theater, and high society with a distinctive blend of charisma and guardedness, forged in the crucible of these formative years. Carol Grace's early life was defined by struggle, a stark contrast to the luxury she would later embrace. Born in 1924 on Manhattan's Lower East Side, a vibrant yet gritty neighborhood filled with immigrant families striving for a foothold in America, Carol entered the world under difficult circumstances. Her mother, Roisin, known at times as Roisin Dori or Brofman, was a Russian Jewish immigrant who had arrived in the United States with dreams of a better life. At just 16, Roisin faced the harsh reality of single motherhood when she gave birth to Carol, a child born out of wedlock whose father vanished without a trace, leaving behind a legacy of mystery and speculation. In later years, Roisin would cryptically suggest that the father might have been Leslie Howard, the British actor whose charm would captivate audiences as Ashley Wilkes in Gone with the Wind. Whether this was a truthful claim or a romanticized tale spun to obscure a painful past, it added a layer of ambiguity to Carol's origins, a shadow that would linger in her consciousness. In the 1920s, societal attitudes toward unwed mothers were unforgiving, and Roisin, young and isolated, bore the weight of this judgment. In an effort to stabilize her life, she entered a brief, loveless marriage to a philosophy professor, a union that produced another daughter, Eleanor, but quickly unraveled due to its own internal tensions. In a particularly heartless act, the professor insisted that Carol, as the illegitimate child, be removed from the household. From ages 2 to 8, Carol was thus consigned to a series of foster homes across New York City, places that offered little in the way of comfort or security. Hunger became her earliest and most vivid memory, a constant reminder of scarcity that instilled a deep-seated fear of being lost in the anonymity of a vast, unforgiving city. These foster homes, often overcrowded and devoid of warmth, were not merely temporary shelters. They were a formative crucible that shaped Carol's resilience, her wariness, and an intense desire to be seen, to rise above the obscurity of being just another child in a crowded system. The year 1933 marked the lowest point of the Great Depression, a period of unprecedented economic despair across the United States. Unemployment had reached a staggering 25%. Banks were collapsing, and families faced daily threats of eviction and starvation. Against this bleak backdrop, Roisin's fortunes took a remarkable turn. Having worked tirelessly in low-wage jobs, likely in a hat factory or similar labor-intensive trade, she had managed to scrape together a living while maintaining distant contact with Carol, who remained in the foster care system. Some accounts suggest that Carol may have spent brief periods with relatives, but the foster system was the defining force of her early years. Then, Roisin met Charles Marcus, a man whose presence would fundamentally alter the course of their lives. Born in 1886, Charles was a seasoned figure, nearly 20 years older than Roisin, exuding the confidence and gravitas of a man who had earned his place through intellect and determination. He was no ordinary suitor. Charles was a titan in the rapidly growing aviation industry, a co-founder of the Bendix Aviation Corporation alongside Vincent Bendix. Bendix was a powerhouse, developing critical components such as brakes, starters, and carburetors for airplanes at a time when aviation was evolving from an experimental novelty into a vital pillar of modern industry. The post-World War I era had positioned aviation as a symbol of progress, and during the Depression, companies like Bendix secured essential government contracts, allowing them to thrive, while others faltered. Charles, as vice president of engineering, was a driving force behind these innovations, his technical expertise contributing to advancements that would later prove critical during World War II. His influence extended beyond the corporate sphere. He would later work with figures like Howard Hughes, solidifying his role as a key architect of modern air travel. When Roisin married Charles on May 30th, 1933, in a modest ceremony in Queens County, New York, it was not merely a personal union, it was a lifeline, a bridge to stability in an era defined by uncertainty and want. The impact of this marriage was immediate and profound for Carol. At 8 years old, she was abruptly removed from the foster care system and thrust into a world of unimaginable luxury. The family relocated to an expansive 18-room duplex on Fifth Avenue, overlooking the verdant expanse of Central Park, a dramatic departure from the cramped, unstable foster homes of her early childhood. This was Park Avenue, the epitome of New York's elite, a neighborhood populated by financiers, industrialists, and families of old money pedigree. The Marcus household was staffed with a full complement of servants, maids, butlers, cooks, creating an atmosphere of opulence that seemed to belong to a different reality altogether. For Carol, this transition was nothing short of jarring. One day she was a child defined by scarcity, her identity tethered to the stigma of illegitimacy and the transience of foster care. The next, she was enveloped in a world of grandeur, surrounded by the trappings of wealth. She later reflected that she never fully reconciled with her earlier, poorer beginnings, suggesting that this new life felt, in some ways, more aligned with her sense of self. However, the psychological impact of such a dramatic shift cannot be overstated. For a young child, moving from deprivation to abundance can evoke a complex array of emotions. Gratitude, certainly, but also a sense of dislocation, perhaps even a lingering fear of not truly belonging in this new world. Could she claim this life as her own? Would it last? These questions likely lingered beneath the surface even as she embraced her new identity as Carol Marcus, adopting her stepfather's surname in a symbolic act of transformation. This name change was far more than a bureaucratic formality. It represented a deliberate break from the stigma of her birth, aligning her with Charles's prestige and offering a fresh start. Charles, for his part, was not a distant or aloof figure. Described as deeply affectionate toward Carol, he welcomed her as his own, fostering an intellectual bond that provided the stability she had long lacked. This connection, rooted in mutual respect and shared curiosity, was a cornerstone of her early years in the Marcus household, equipping her with the confidence to later navigate the elite circles of high society. The marriage not only transformed Carol's life, but also brought to light the complex layers of Roisin's past, revealing a family secret that added depth and nuance to their story. 2 years after the wedding, in 1935, Charles discovered that Roisin had concealed the existence of another daughter, Eleanor, who, like Carol, had been left in a foster home when Roisin married. Eleanor, Carol's half-sister, shared Roisin as a mother, but had a different father, a product of Roisin's brief marriage to the philosophy professor. The decision to keep Eleanor hidden likely stemmed from the intense societal pressures of the era, where an unwed mother with multiple children faced significant judgment and scrutiny. Roisin, perhaps fearful that revealing Eleanor's existence would jeopardize her marriage to Charles or overwhelm him with the weight of her past, chose to remain silent. This secrecy reflects the rigid expectations placed on women at the time, who often had to erase or obscure parts of their history to secure social acceptance. The revelation must have been a profound shock to Charles, a successful executive building a new life with his bride, only to learn of another child left behind in the foster system. Yet his response was extraordinary in its compassion. Rather than rejecting this new reality, he extended the same warmth and generosity to Eleanor, welcoming her into the Park Avenue household. Suddenly the family was whole. Roisin, Charles, Carol, and Eleanor, united under one lavish roof, though not without the shadows cast by Roisin's past choices. For Carol, learning of Eleanor's existence at the age of 10 must have been an emotional whirlwind, a mixture of joy at gaining a sister, confusion at her mother's secrecy, and perhaps a subtle shift in her sense of identity as the sole child rescued from foster care. Eleanor's integration introduced new dynamics to the family, potentially sparking sibling rivalry, but also fostering a shared understanding of their fractured beginnings. Eleanor later commented on the intellectual connection between Carol and Charles, a bond she felt unable to penetrate, suggesting a natural affinity or perceived favoritism that added complexity to their family life. The historical context of 1933 amplifies the significance of this transformation. The Great Depression had cast a long shadow over America, with families losing homes, jobs, and hope in the face of widespread economic devastation. Franklin D. Roosevelt's inauguration and the introduction of the New Deal offered a glimmer of hope. But for most Americans, daily life remained a relentless struggle. The aviation industry, however, stood as a beacon of progress amid the gloom. Under Charles's leadership, Bendix was at the forefront, developing technologies such as hydraulic brakes and fuel systems that would become critical as global tensions hinted at the approach of another world war. Charles's wealth shielded the family from the era's hardships, allowing them to inhabit a world of debutante balls, private schools, and social prominence. Carol attended elite institutions like the Dalton School, where she formed friendships with figures such as Gloria Vanderbilt and Una O'Neill, the daughter of playwright Eugene O'Neill. These connections, facilitated by Charles's status, positioned Carol at the heart of New York's social elite, a world far removed from the foster homes of her early years. Park Avenue in the 1930s was more than a geographic location. It was a symbol of aspiration, a bastion of wealth where immigrant families like Roshin's could achieve the American dream. Yet this dream was not without its flaws. Roshin's decision to conceal Eleanor's existence reveals the sacrifices required for such a social ascent. Survival often demanded difficult choices, and for women, marriage was as much a strategic maneuver as a romantic one. Psychologically, for Carol, this environment was a paradox, a fairy tale-like life as Eleanor described it, yet one built on a foundation of hidden truths. Carol's nickname, Baby, in social circles, her striking golden blonde hair, and her sharp wit made her a darling of the elite, but her later writings reveal a persistent fear of anonymity, a lingering scar from her early years of invisibility. As the 1930s transitioned into the early 1940s, the Marcos family's new reality became firmly established. Carol continued her education at prestigious institutions like the National Park Seminary, where she refined the charm and humor that would become hallmarks of her later persona. Roshin and Charles's marriage, though it would eventually end in separation by the early 1950s, provided a stable foundation during these years. Roshin, glamorous and perhaps living vicariously through her daughter's social ascent, maintained a close but complicated bond with Carol, one that would fray in later decades as their paths diverged. Eleanor's presence enriched the family dynamic. Her marriage in 1950 to Baron Henri de la Chapelle further cemented their place in high society. For Carol, these years served as a bridge from her troubled beginnings to a future marked by significant personal and professional milestones. Her marriages, first to writer William Saroyan, twice resulting in 2 children, Aram and Lucy, and later to actor Walter Matthau in 1959, with whom she had a son, Charlie, were shaped by the confidence and social acumen she developed in the Marcos household. Her friendships with literary giants like Truman Capote, who drew inspiration from her for the character of Holly Golightly in Breakfast at Tiffany's, reflect the polished persona she cultivated during this period. The broader implications of this transformation highlight the stark class divides of the era. While the Great Depression ravaged the working class, industrialists like Charles thrived, their innovations driving economic and military advancements. For women like Roshin, marriage offered a pathway to stability, but it often required navigating complex societal expectations, and in her case, concealing parts of her past. The revelation of Eleanor's existence forced a reckoning, exposing Roshin's deceptions while showcasing Charles's remarkable compassion. This complexity likely influenced Carol's own relationships. Her later estrangement from Aram and Lucy, where she candidly admitted mutual dislike, echoes the guardedness rooted in her early years. Yet Charles's unconditional acceptance provided a counterbalance, offering a model of love that anchored her through life's challenges. The adoption of the Marcus surname was empowering, but it also meant burying parts of her past, creating a duality of liberation and loss that would resonate throughout her life. The period from 1933 to the early 1940s encapsulates broader themes of reinvention that defined the American experience. Immigrants like Roisin faced prejudice and poverty, yet found ways to climb the social ladder through determination and strategic choices. Innovators like Charles built empires that shaped the technological and economic future. For Carol, the leap from foster care to Park Avenue was a journey from obscurity to prominence, but it carried lingering shadows. Gratitude tempered by survivor guilt, luxury tinged with the isolation. Carol's later memoir, Among the Porcupines, reflects on the prickly relationships born from the tensions of this era. The saga of Eleanor's discovery underscores how past decisions can haunt, yet Charles's forgiveness demonstrates the transformative power of acceptance. This was no polished fairy tale, it was a raw human story, rich with flaws and redemption. By the early 1940s, as Carol entered her teenage years, she was poised for a life of adventure, Hollywood, marriages, literary circles, but the foundation was laid in the transformative crucible of 1933, a moment that redefined her path and left an indelible mark on her identity. Third marriage and the beginning of a career in theater, early 1940s, 1952. William Saroyan, born in 1908 in Fresno, California, was a literary luminary by the early 1940s. His 1940 Pulitzer Prize for The Time of Your Life, a play that captured the hopeful spirit of ordinary Americans, established him as a leading voice in theater and literature. His works, blending humanism with a whimsical poetic style, resonated deeply during the Depression and wartime years. Carol, then 16 or 17, was introduced to Saroyan through mutual acquaintances, including bandleader Artie Shaw, a jazz icon known for his high-profile romances with actresses like Lana Turner and Ava Gardner. Shaw's brief involvement with Carol, a fleeting connection in the vibrant New York social scene, facilitated her entry into Saroyan's world. At 35, Saroyan was captivated by Carol's youthful energy, blonde beauty, and sharp wit, qualities that stood in stark contrast to his introspective, sometimes brooding demeanor. Their romance sparked in the intense atmosphere of wartime America, where uncertainty and urgency permeated daily life, moved swiftly. In 1943, with Saroyan on leave from his Army service, they eloped in Dayton, Ohio, a practical choice given his military posting nearby. Carol, just 18, stepped into a marriage with a man nearly twice her age, a union that promised passion but delivered profound challenges. The first marriage, spanning 1943 to 1949, was a 6-year odyssey marked by volatility. Saroyan's literary success, while bringing fame, did not translate to financial or emotional stability. His compulsive gambling, pouring earnings into poker games, horse races, and other speculative ventures, placed immense strain on their household. Despite the income from his plays, novels, and short stories, the couple often faced financial uncertainty, a source of constant tension. Far more troubling, however, were the allegations of abuse that Carol later detailed in her 1992 memoir, Among the Porcupines. She described incidents that were both shocking and deeply traumatic. Saroyan, in fits of rage, throwing her downstairs, attempting to choke her in the presence of their young children. These acts of physical violence were compounded by emotional cruelty, a pattern that left lasting scars on Carol and her family. Saroyan's charm, which had initially drawn her to him, could vanish in an instant, replaced by a temper that destabilized their home. His volatility was not merely a personal failing, but a reflection of deeper struggles. Perhaps the pressure of fame, the weight of wartime anxieties, or unresolved personal demons. In 1949, the marriage reached a breaking point. Saroyan discovered that Carol was born out of wedlock and of Jewish heritage, facts her mother, Roisin, had concealed. In an era marked by pervasive prejudices, these revelations, particularly Carol's illegitimacy and ethnicity, prompted Saroyan to file for divorce. The decision was a devastating blow to Carol, who had invested 6 years in a relationship that blended love with pain. The divorce was not the end of their story, however. Saroyan, unable to fully let go, pursued Carol with relentless determination. He sent her letters, made phone calls, and pleaded for reconciliation, his words oscillating between remorse and desperation. This persistence bore fruit in 1951, when Carol, swayed by lingering affection and perhaps a hope for change, agreed to remarry him. The second marriage, however, was even briefer, lasting only until 1952. The same issues that had plagued their first union, gambling, volatility, and emotional cruelty, resurfaced, proving insurmountable. Over the course of their 2 marriages, their relationship spanned approximately 8 years, interrupted by the 1949 to 1951 separation. Saroyan's fixation on Carol endured long after their final split. He never remarried, and until his death in 1981, he remained captivated by her, dedicating works to her indirectly and weaving her influence into his stories and plays. His writings often carried echoes of their complex relationship, a testament to the profound impact Carol had on his creative life. For Carol, these 8 years were a crucible, a period of intense personal growth forged in adversity. And among the porcupines, she reflected candidly on the mental toll of Saroyan's cruelty, describing how his abusive behavior eroded her confidence and sense of self. Yet, she also acknowledged the passion that had initially united them, a fiery connection that, while destructive, fueled her resilience. These experiences taught her critical lessons about boundaries, self-preservation, and the importance of maintaining her identity in the shadow of a literary giant. Her openness about the abuse, particularly in an era when such matters were often silenced, was a courageous act that anticipated the feminist movements of later decades. From this stormy union emerged 2 children who would carry forward the family's artistic legacy. Aram Saroyan, born in 1943 at the outset of their first marriage, grew into a celebrated writer, poet, and playwright. His minimalist poetry, most notably the single-word poem Leite, which earned a National Endowment for the Arts Award, showcased an innovative approach to language that distinguished him from his father's more narrative-driven work. Aram's writings, including his memoir Last Rites, grapple with the complexities of his heritage, exploring the trauma of witnessing his parents' volatile relationship and the challenge of living in his father's towering shadow. His reflections reveal a deep awareness of the emotional scars left by Saroyan's behavior, as well as a commitment to forging his own creative path. Lucy Saroyan, born in 1946, followed her mother into the world of acting, appearing in films and television throughout the 1970s and 1980s. Her career, though promising, was tragically cut short by her death in April 2003 at the age of 57, just 3 months before Carol's passing, in July 2003 from a brain aneurysm at age 78. The proximity of their deaths was a profound loss, compounded by reports of estrangement between mother and daughter in later years, though the reasons for this rift remain private. Carol was survived by Aram, her son Charles, from her later marriage to Walter Matthau, a sister, Eleanor, whom she discovered in adulthood, and grandchildren, including Strawberry Saroyan, who also pursued a career in writing. Parallel to the upheaval of her personal life, Carol embarked on a theatrical career that would become a cornerstone of her legacy. In 1942, at the age of 18, she made her Broadway debut in a double bill of Saroyan's one-act plays across the board on Tomorrow Morning and Talking to You, performed at the Belasco Theater. These works were quintessential Saroyan, blending optimism with quirky, character-driven narratives. Across the Board on Tomorrow Morning explored themes of horse racing and dreams in a surreal, almost fantastical style, while Talking to You featured monologues that captured the poetry and humor of everyday life. Historical records do not specify Carol's exact roles, whether she was a lead or a supporting player, but her participation was a significant milestone. Performing in her future husband's works added a layer of complexity to her debut, as her professional aspirations intertwined with her burgeoning romance. The emotional intensity of their relationship likely informed her performances, lending authenticity to the quirky, heartfelt characters Saroyan crafted. The Broadway scene of 1942 was a vibrant refuge for audiences grappling with the uncertainties of World War II. Rationing, blackouts, and the constant news of soldiers overseas created a backdrop of anxiety, and theaters offered a vital escape. The industry, though still male-dominated, was beginning to see women like Ethel Merman and Mary Martin redefine opportunities for actresses. Carol's debut, while not in blockbuster productions, was notable for its alignment with Saroyan's experimental approach, which prioritized artistic vision over commercial appeal. The Belasco Theater, with its rich history and grandeur, lent credibility to her early efforts. Carol's natural charisma and timing, honed through the challenges of her foster care upbringing and her immersion in New York's elite circles, resonated with audiences. Her ability to embody Saroyan's idiosyncratic characters, often dreamers and eccentrics, marked her as a talent to watch, setting the stage for a career that officially spanned from 1948 to 2003, a remarkable 55 years of dedication to the arts. From 1942 to 1952, Carol navigated the demands of motherhood, marital strife, and her burgeoning career with remarkable fortitude. While raising Aram and Lucy, she continued to perform in Saroyan's works, including Jim Dandy, a play she had acted in during her school years at Dalton. These early roles blurred the lines between her personal and professional lives, as her relationship with Saroyan influenced both her performances and her understanding of the theater world. The war years added further complexity. Saroyan, drafted into the Army, served stateside as a filmmaker, leaving Carol to manage their young family during his frequent absences. The societal norms of the 1940s often silenced discussions of domestic violence, particularly in celebrity circles, where public personas were carefully curated. Carol's later decision to speak openly about Saroyan's abuse, first in interviews and later in her memoir, was a groundbreaking act of courage. By sharing her experiences, she challenged the stigma surrounding domestic violence, offering a voice to others who suffered in silence. Her personal struggles deeply informed her performances, lending a raw authenticity to roles that required emotional depth. The pain of Saroyan's abuse, the financial strain of his gambling, and the challenges of raising two children in a turbulent household gave Carol a reservoir of experience to draw upon. By the late 1940s, as her first marriage began to crumble, she took on additional roles that strengthened her resume, building a foundation for later successes. Her work in this period was not limited to Saroyan's plays. She sought out opportunities to expand her range, honing her craft in the competitive New York theater scene. These efforts laid the groundwork for her role in Will Success Spoil Rock Hunter, 1955, a satirical Broadway comedy where she served as an understudy to Jane Mansfield, and met Walter Matthau, her future husband. This production marked a turning point, but it was the work of the 1940s that established her as a serious actress. Literary career, acting, and fateful encounter, 1955 to 1961. In the mid-1950s, New York City was a whirlwind of creativity, ambition, and the electric pulse of a world rebuilding after war. Carol Grace, a woman whose early life was forged in the grit of the Lower East Side, emerged during this vibrant era as both a writer and an actress, her talents weaving a story of resilience and reinvention. From 1955 to 1961, her life unfolded with the intensity of a Broadway drama, marked by a literary debut that bared her soul, stage roles that showcased her depth, and a serendipitous meeting with Walter Matthau that sparked a lifelong partnership. This period wasn't just a chapter in her life, it was a testament to her ability to transform hardship into art, proving that a past filled with uncertainty could fuel a future of brilliance. In 1955, Carol Grace stepped into the literary world with her first published work, a novella titled The Secret in the Daisy. Published by Random House, a powerhouse known for nurturing literary giants like William Faulkner and Truman Capote, this wasn't just a book. It was a deeply personal excavation of her past. The novella drew directly from Carol's childhood as a foster child, a time when she navigated the instability of temporary homes in New York's rough-and-tumble Lower East Side. Born in 1924 to a teenage mother, Roisin Marcus, and raised without a father, Carol's early years were marked by the ache of displacement and the search for belonging. Those experiences, shuffling between foster homes, adapting to new families, and carrying the weight of being different, gave her a raw, emotional reservoir to draw from. In The Secret in the Daisy, she channeled that pain into a narrative that captured the quiet longing of a child seeking roots. The story wasn't just fiction, it was a mirror to her soul, reflecting the resilience it took to survive a childhood of uncertainty. Writing such a personal work in the 1950s, when women authors often struggled for recognition in a male-dominated literary world, was an act of courage. Carol didn't shy away from her truth, she embraced it, crafting a debut that announced her as a writer with something vital to say. The novella's publication by Random House was no small feat. It signaled that her voice, born from struggle, had found a place among the era's literary elite. That same year, 1955, Carol was also carving out a space for herself on the Broadway stage, a world where the stakes were high and the spotlight unforgiving. She landed a role in The Time of Your Life, a play by William Saroyan, her former husband, whose poetic storytelling captured the dreams and struggles of ordinary Americans in a San Francisco bar. The play's themes of searching for meaning resonated deeply with Carol, whose own life had been a quest for stability amid chaos. Her involvement in this production, staged at the city center, placed her among a cast of seasoned performers, each performance a chance to hone her craft in front of live audiences who expected nothing less than perfection. But it was another play that year that would shift the course of her life, Will Success Spoil Rock Hunter, a biting comedy by George Axelrod that took aim at the absurdities of fame and ambition in post-war America. Carol played the role of a secretary, a small but pivotal part in a fast-paced ensemble that kept audiences roaring with laughter. The show opened on October 13, 1955, at the 46th Street Theater, a venue steeped in Broadway history, and ran for an impressive 444 performances, a testament to its popularity. Each night, the theater buzzed with the energy of packed houses, the rustle of programs, and the anticipation of sharp, witty dialogue delivered with precision. For Carol, this wasn't just another role. It was a turning point, a moment where her talent and tenacity met opportunity. During the rehearsals and performances of Will Success, Spoil Rock, Hunter, Carol's life took a romantic twist that would define her future. Amid the chaos of backstage preparations, costume fittings, line readings, and the camaraderie of a tight-knit cast, she met Walter Matthau, a lanky actor with a gravelly voice and a knack for stealing scenes with his sardonic charm. Their connection wasn't just professional, it was electric, born in the shared intensity of a Broadway production where long hours and high stakes forged deep bonds. Walter, known later for roles in films like The Odd Couple and Grumpy Old Men, was in 1955 a working actor, hustling for parts just like Carol. Their meeting sparked something real, a romance that grew through late-night conversations, shared laughs over diner coffee, and the unspoken understanding of two people who'd faced their own struggles. By 1959, they were married, their partnership a blend of creative synergy and mutual respect that would carry them through decades together. There's a curious wrinkle in the story of how they met, one that adds a layer of intrigue. Some accounts suggest Walter later claimed he fell in love with Carol through her writing, specifically a book that captivated him, prompting him to seek out its author. If he was referring to The Secret in The Daisy, published in 1955, the timeline aligns barely. It's plausible that Walter, a voracious reader with a sharp intellect, came across Carol's novella, was struck by its raw honesty, and sought her out, only to find her in the cast of Will Success, Spoil Rock, Hunter. This story paints a romantic picture, an actor moved by words, tracking down their creator and finding love in the process. However, if he meant her later memoir, Among the Porcupines, published in 1992, the timeline collapses, as they were already married by 1959. The more grounded and likely truth is that their connection ignited during the production of Will Success, Spoil Rock, Hunter. The intensity of Broadway, rehearsals stretching into the early hours, the adrenaline of opening night, the camaraderie of a cast created the perfect crucible for their romance. Carol's quiet strength and emotional depth complemented Walter's quick wit and unconventional charm, forming a bond that felt inevitable. Their meeting wasn't just a chance encounter, it was the start of a partnership that would anchor Carol's life and career. Carol's Broadway career didn't pause after Will Success, Spoil Rock, Hunter. She continued to build her reputation with roles in other significant productions, each one a chance to showcase her versatility. In 1957, she appeared in The Square Root of Wonderful, a play by Carson McCullers that explored the tangled dynamics of family and love. Staged at the National Theater, the play wasn't a box office smash, running for only 45 performances, but it was a critical darling for its introspective depth. Carol's role, though supporting, allowed her to tap into the emotional complexity she knew so well, drawing on her own experiences of fractured family ties, her mother's struggles, her absent father, and her years in foster care. McCullers' writing, with its focus on outsiders and emotional wounds, resonated with Carol, who brought a quiet authenticity to her performance. The production, directed by George Schaefer, was a challenging one, requiring actors to balance raw emotion with poetic restraint, and Carol's ability to hold her own in such a nuanced play earned her respect among her peers. In 1958, Carol took on another Broadway role in The Cold Wind and the Warm, a play by S.N. Berman that offered a warm, humorous look at Jewish American identity. Staged at the Morosco Theater, the play ran for 120 performances and featured a stellar cast, including Eli Wallach and Maureen Stapleton. Carol's role, again a supporting one, allowed her to shine in scenes that blended wit with cultural resonance. The play's exploration of family, tradition, and the immigrant experience echoed Carol's own roots, connecting her to the Lower East Side's Jewish community where she was born. Performing in such a production was no small feat. Broadway in the 1950s was a competitive arena, with theaters like the Schubert, Lyceum, and Morosco drawing crowds eager for stories that captured the era's blend of optimism and unease. Carol's ability to navigate these roles, comedy in Will's Success Spoil Rock Hunter, drama in The Square Root of Wonderful, and cultural warmth in The Cold Wind and the Warm, showed her range and cemented her place in a world where every performance was a high-stakes gamble. While her stage career thrived, Carol also ventured into the burgeoning worlds of film and television, mediums that were reshaping how stories reached audiences. In 1958, she landed a small, uncredited role in Stage Struck, a film directed by Sidney Lumet that starred Henry Fonda and Susan Strasberg. The movie followed a young actress chasing Broadway dreams, a narrative Carol knew intimately from her own life. Her part, listed simply as minor role, was a fleeting moment, perhaps a few seconds in a crowded theater scene, but it marked her entry into cinema at a time when Hollywood was gaining ground over live theater. The film, shot in New York, captured the gritty glamour of the city's theatrical world, with scenes set in bustling rehearsal spaces and dimly lit stages. For Carol, even a brief role was a chance to experience the magic of film, where a single take could immortalize a performance, unlike the ephemeral nature of theater. Working under Lumet, a director known for his intensity and focus on character, gave her a taste of the discipline required in a new medium. A year later, in 1959, Carol took on a more substantial role in Gangster Story, a low-budget crime drama that cast her as Carol Logan, a librarian entangled in a world of mobsters and betrayal. Directed by and starring Walter Matthau, the film was a gritty, no-frills production, shot in black and white with a raw energy that suited its underworld setting. With a modest IMDb rating of 4.7, it wasn't a critical success, but it showcased Carol's willingness to take risks, stepping into a genre far removed from the polished stages of Broadway. Playing opposite Walter, her real-life partner by this time, added a layer of authenticity to their scenes. Their chemistry, built on shared humor and mutual respect, likely spilled over into the film, giving their interactions a natural spark. The role of Carol Logan, a seemingly ordinary woman caught in extraordinary circumstances, allowed Carol to draw on her own experiences of navigating uncertainty, from her foster care years to her ascent in the unpredictable world of show business. The film, though not a blockbuster, was a milestone, proving she could hold her own on screen alongside a rising star like Walter. By 1961, Carol's career reached a new peak with her appearance in Alfred Hitchcock Presents, a television series that defined suspense for a generation. Known for its chilling stories and Alfred Hitchcock's wry introductions, the show was a cultural juggernaut, drawing millions of viewers each week with its 25-minute tales of crime, betrayal, and unexpected twists. Carol landed the role of the woman in an episode titled Cop for a Day, part of the 7th season, episode 4, which aired in 1961. The episode, a taut drama about a criminal posing as a police officer, required Carol to convey quiet intensity, a skill honed through years of stage work and personal resilience. Her performance, though brief, fit perfectly into the show's tightly crafted narrative, where every glance and gesture carried weight. With an IMDb rating of 8.5, Alfred Hitchcock Presents was a high watermark for television quality, and Carol's involvement placed her among the era's top talent, from actors like Joseph Cotten to directors like Robert Stevens. There's a slight confusion in some records, with a few sources mistakenly listing her involvement as early as 1955, but the specific details of Cop for a Day and its 1961 air date are clear. For Carol, appearing in such a prestigious show was a coup, a chance to reach a national audience and prove her versatility in a medium that was rapidly overtaking theater and film in popularity. The years from 1955 to 1961 were a crucible for Carol Grace, a time when she transformed her past into art and built a career across multiple mediums. Her novella The Secret in the Daisy was more than a literary debut. It was a bold act of self-expression, turning the pain of her foster care years into a story that resonated with readers. Those years in the 1920s and early 1930s, spent moving between foster homes under the care of agencies like the Hebrew Orphan Asylum, had left deep marks. Foster care back then was a patchwork system, with children often placed in homes where they were expected to work, washing dishes, scrubbing floors, or helping in small businesses, while grappling with the stigma of being orphans. Carol's ability to channel that instability into her writing was a testament to her strength, not just as a survivor, but as an artist who could find beauty in adversity. Her Broadway roles, from the poetic The Time of Your Life to the satirical Will Success Spoil Rock Hunter, the introspective The Square Root of Wonderful, and the culturally rich The Cold Wind and the Warm, showcased her range, proving she could navigate comedy, drama, and everything in between. Each performance, delivered in theaters filled with the scent of cigarette smoke and the hum of expectant crowds, was a chance to refine her craft and connect with audiences. Her ventures into film and television, Stage Struck, Gangster Story, and Alfred Hitchcock Presents, marked her as an artist unafraid to explore new frontiers. The 1950s were a transformative decade for entertainment, with television sets becoming household staples and films competing for attention in a crowded cultural landscape. Carol's roles, though often small, were steps into a broader spotlight, each one a chance to test her skills in front of a camera rather than a live audience. Her appearance in Alfred Hitchcock Presents was particularly significant, placing her in a show that defined the era's storytelling, where suspense and character converged in tightly crafted narratives. The love story with Walter Matthau, sparked during the heady days of Will Success Spoil Rock Hunter, was the emotional anchor of this period. Their marriage in 1959 was more than a personal milestone. It was the beginning of a creative partnership that blended their talents and passions, grounding Carol in a world that had often felt unsteady. Marriage to Walter Matthau and continuing career 1959 to 2000. On August 21st, 1959, Carol Grace married Walter Matthau, a recently divorced actor whose career was on the verge of skyrocketing. This wasn't just another wedding for Carol. It was the start of a partnership that would anchor her life for over 4 decades, lasting until Walter's passing on July 1st, 2000. Walter was a towering figure in the entertainment world, known for his unforgettable roles in films like The Odd Couple and Grumpy Old Men. His distinctive face, with its lived-in quality, and his voice, capable of delivering both humor and heartache, made him a beloved icon. Their connection was electric from the start, a meeting of two souls who understood the relentless demands of show business and the art of personal reinvention. Carol, with her theater background and her ability to navigate the glittering circles of high society, Adrat found in Walter a partner who matched her passion and shared her love for the craft. Their marriage was a blend of mutual support and shared ambition, a foundation that allowed them to thrive both personally and professionally. Together they welcomed a son, Charles Matthau, who would grow up immersed in the world of film and theater, eventually carving out his own career as a filmmaker. This marriage was more than a personal milestone. It was a bedrock that gave Carol the stability to pursue her creative dreams with renewed vigor, knowing she had a partner who understood the challenges of life in the spotlight. Carol's career was a testament to her refusal to be defined solely as the wife of a famous actor. She was a performer with a deep passion for the stage, a fire that had been kindled in her early years and never dimmed. In 1961, just 2 years after marrying Walter, she returned to Broadway in a production called Once There Was a Russian. This wasn't a minor role or a cameo. It was a significant opportunity that showcased her talent and determination to hold her own in one of the most competitive arenas in theater. Broadway in the early 1960s was a cultural epicenter, with theaters buzzing with audiences eager for stories that captured the complexities of the human experience. Carol's performance in Once There Was a Russian was a powerful statement of her ability to command the stage, proving she was far more than a socialite or a celebrity spouse. She brought a unique blend of vulnerability and strength to her roles, qualities drawn from her own life, her childhood hunger in foster homes, her reinvention in the Marcus household, and the emotional challenges of her earlier marriages. Her stage presence was captivating, a reflection of a woman who had fought to be seen and was now claiming her place in the spotlight. Each performance was a reminder of her resilience, a way of channeling her past into art that resonated with audiences and critics alike. Her ambitions extended beyond the theater, as Carol also made significant contributions to film and television, showcasing her versatility as a performer. In 1976, she took on the role of Nellie in Mikey and Nicky, a gritty, character-driven drama directed by Elaine May. This wasn't a glossy Hollywood blockbuster. It was a raw, emotionally intense film about friendship and betrayal, starring John Cassavetes and Peter Falk. Carol's role as Nellie was small but pivotal, adding depth to the film's tense, authentic atmosphere. With a 7.3 rating on IMDb, Mikey and Nicky has earned a lasting place in the hearts of cinephiles who value its unflinching exploration of human relationships. Playing Nellie allowed Carol to draw on the emotional depth she had cultivated through her own life's trials. Her early years of scarcity, her complex family dynamics, and the strength she had built through reinvention. Her performance wasn't about flash or fame. It was about bringing truth to the story, delivering a quiet yet powerful contribution that enhanced the film's impact. She understood the nuances of the characters and the world they inhabited, making Nellie a figure who felt real, grounded in the kind of lived experience Carol knew all too well. In 1978, Carol stepped into a different kind of spotlight when she appeared on the Barbara Walters special, presenting herself not as a character, but as Carol Grace, unfiltered and authentic. This wasn't a scripted role. It was an opportunity to share her perspective with one of the most iconic interviewers of the era. The Barbara Walters special was a cultural phenomenon, a platform where public figures revealed their personal stories to a national audience, Carol's appearance placed her among the luminaries of her time, a testament to her status as a respected figure in the entertainment world. Being herself on camera required a unique kind of courage, one that demanded vulnerability and honesty in front of millions. She approached the interview with the same wit and charm that had made her a beloved presence in social and artistic circles, offering viewers a glimpse into the woman behind the roles. Her ability to hold her own in such a high-profile setting was a reflection of her confidence, honed through years of navigating the complexities of fame and personal identity. Carol's presence in the entertainment world wasn't limited to formal performances. She was also noted as an uncredited audience member in the AFI Life Achievement Award TV miniseries, a prestigious event honoring the giants of the film industry. Though the specific year isn't documented, her attendance at such events underscores her deep connection to the world of cinema and theater. She wasn't just a bystander. She was a recognized figure, someone whose presence at these gatherings carried weight. Whether she was on stage, on screen, or in the audience at industry galas, Carol was a constant thread in the cultural fabric of her time, her life intertwined with the heartbeat of the entertainment world. Her involvement in these events wasn't about seeking attention. It was about being part of a community she had helped shape through her work and her relationships. Beyond her performances, Carol Grace was a storyteller with a profound need to share her truth. In 1992, she published her memoir, Among the Porcupines, a work that laid bare the complexities of her life with unflinching honesty. The title itself is a vivid metaphor, evoking the prickly, intricate dynamics of her relationships, from her childhood marked by abandonment in foster homes to her transformation through her mother's marriage to Charles Marcus, her strained relationships with Aram and Lucy, and her enduring partnership with Walter Matthau. Writing Among the Porcupines was a courageous act of self-expression, a way for Carol to reclaim her narrative and offer it to the world. The memoir dives deep into the emotional scars of her early years, the glamour and challenges of her Park Avenue days, and the complexities of navigating fame and family. It resonates with readers because of its raw honesty. Carol didn't shy away from the messy human aspects of her story. She wrote candidly about her estrangement from Aram and Lucy, acknowledging the mutual dislike that had grown over time, a reflection of the guardedness that had been part of her since childhood. Yet she also celebrated the love and stability she found with Walter, a partnership that provided an anchor through the highs and lows of her career. The memoir wasn't just a recounting of events, it was a meditation on identity, resilience, and the power of storytelling to make sense of a complicated life. The period from 1959 to 2000 was a transformative era in American culture, and Carol's life was deeply intertwined with its shifts. The late 1950s and early 1960s were marked by both optimism and upheaval, with the civil rights movement gaining momentum and the entertainment industry evolving from the polished glamour of Hollywood's golden age to a grittier, more experimental phase. Films like Mikey and Nicky reflected this shift, embracing raw, realistic storytelling that resonated with audiences seeking authenticity. Carol's work in theater and film placed her at the forefront of this evolution, a woman who bridged the elegance of Broadway with the bold new voices of cinema. Her marriage to Walter Matthau thrived in this dynamic environment. Walter's career soared during these decades, with roles that cemented his status as a beloved figure. But Carol was never merely his shadow. She was a collaborator, a muse, and a creative force in her own right, contributing to their shared life in ways that extended far beyond the domestic sphere. Raising their son Charles was a central part of Carol's life, bringing both joy and responsibility. Born into a family of performers, Charles grew up surrounded by the vibrancy of the entertainment world, eventually becoming a director and producer himself. Carol's approach to motherhood was shaped by her own complex history, her years in foster care, the secrets of her mother's past, and the resilience she had built through adversity. She brought the same intensity to parenting that she brought to her career, though her relationships with Aram and Lucy remained fraught. In Among the Porcupines, she addressed these challenges with striking honesty, refusing to gloss over the emotional distance that had developed with her older children. With Charles, however, she and Walter created a tight-knit family unit, balancing the demands of their careers with the warmth of home life. This balance wasn't always easy. Show business is a world of long hours, constant travel, and public scrutiny, but Carol and Walter's shared commitment made it possible. Their marriage was a testament to enduring love in an industry notorious for fleeting relationships. The challenges were real: late nights on set, the pressure of fame, the constant juggle of personal and professional lives. But Carol and Walter's partnership was built on mutual respect, a shared sense of humor, and an unspoken understanding of what it took to thrive in their world. Walter's death on July 1st, 2000, was a profound loss, marking the end of a 41-year marriage that had been the cornerstone of Carol's adult life. Yet, even in the face of grief, she carried forward the legacy of their partnership, continuing to engage with the world through her writing and her deep ties to the entertainment community. To death and legacy. In the early 2000s, Carol remained a vibrant figure in Manhattan, the city that had shaped her from birth. At 75 in 2000, she was a woman who had seen it all: grit and glamour, heartbreak and triumph. Her social circle was a testament to her magnetic personality, a network that spanned decades and included some of the most influential names in New York's cultural scene. She had long been friends with figures like Una O'Neill, daughter of playwright Eugene O'Neill, and Gloria Vanderbilt, the heiress whose family name carried weight in high society. But it was her lifelong friendship with Truman Capote, forged when they were just teenagers at the Dalton School, that stood out as a cornerstone of her social influence. Capote, by then a literary legend, had seen something special in Carol from the start: her sharp wit, her infectious charm, her ability to make any room feel alive. These qualities made her a sought-after companion, someone who could navigate the complexities of New York's elite with ease. Her dinner parties were the stuff of legend, filled with laughter, lively debates, and her signature humor that could cut through the pretense of high society with a single quip. Carol's wit was more than just a social asset. It was a defining trait that left an indelible mark on those who knew her. She had a way of turning observations into pearls of wisdom, delivered with a smirk that made you laugh and think at the same time. One of her most famous lines, tossed off with her characteristic blend of humor and insight, was, "The process of dying begins the moment we're born, but it picks up speed at dinner parties." This wasn't just a clever remark about the exhaustion of social obligations. It was a profound reflection on the fleeting nature of life. Carol saw the dinner party, the clinking glasses, the forced smiles, the endless small talk as a microcosm of existence where moments of connection were tinged with the awareness of mortality. It was a line that captured her unique perspective, a mix of cynicism, humor, and existential clarity that made her conversations unforgettable. In these final years, as she navigated the challenges of aging, this wit remained a constant, a reminder of the spark that had always defined her. Perhaps the most enduring aspect of Carol's legacy during this period was her connection to Truman Capote's breakfast at Tiffany's. Capote, her friend since their teenage years, had openly declared that Carol was the inspiration for Holly Golightly, the enigmatic heroine of his 1958 novella, later brought to life by Audrey Hepburn in the 1961 film. This wasn't about Holly's profession as a call girl. Carol's life bore no resemblance to that, but about the essence of the character, her free-spirited charm, her blend of vulnerability and bravado, her ability to captivate everyone around her. In the early 2000s, as Carol reflected on her life in Manhattan, this connection remained a point of pride and significance. Holly Golightly was more than a character. She was a cultural icon, a symbol of mid-20th century femininity and independence. Being the muse for such a figure tied Carol to a narrative that had transcended literature and film, resonating with audiences worldwide. It was a testament to her ability to leave a lasting impression, not just on Capote, but on the cultural landscape at large. In her final years, as she faced personal losses, this literary legacy offered a reminder of the impact she had made, a thread that connected her past to her present. The year 2000 brought the first of the profound losses that would define Carol's final years. Her second marriage to actor Walter Matthau had been a pillar of her life since 1959. Unlike her turbulent first marriage to William Saroyan, which spanned 1943 to 1949, and briefly from 1951 to 1952, her relationship with Walter was a haven of stability and love. Walter, known for his iconic roles in films like The Odd Couple, 1968, and Grumpy Old Men, 1993, was not just a celebrated actor, but a devoted husband and father to their son, Charles Matthau, born in 1962, who later became a director. Their 41-year marriage was a partnership built on mutual respect, shared laughter, and a deep appreciation for each other's talents. Carol often spoke of Walter's humor and warmth, qualities that mirrored her own and made their bond unbreakable. But on July 1, 2000, Walter passed away at the age of 79, leaving Carol to face a world without her partner of 4 decades. At 75, Carol was living in Manhattan, the city that had been her home since birth, and Walter's death was a seismic shift. The loss of her husband, her confidant, and her collaborator left her grappling with a profound sense of solitude. Manhattan, with its bustling streets and vibrant cultural scene, had always been a reflection of Carol's own energy, but now it felt quieter, emptier. She continued to live in the city, surrounded by memories of their life together, their home, their shared moments in the theater world, the laughter that had filled their days. Walter's absence was not just personal but public, as his death marked the end of an era for fans of his work. For Carol, it was a deeply personal grief, a reminder of the fragility of the life they had built together. She carried on, drawing on the resilience that had seen her through earlier challenges, but the weight of this loss was a constant companion in her final years. The pain deepened in 2003 with an even more devastating blow, the death of her daughter, Lucy Saroyan. Born in 1946 during Carol's first marriage to William Saroyan, Lucy had followed her mother into the world of acting, building a career in films and television throughout the 1970s and 1980s. Her performances, though not as widely celebrated as her mother's, carried the same spark of creativity and dedication. Lucy's death in April 2003, at the age of 57, came just 3 months before Carol's own passing, a cruel twist that amplified the sorrow of her final months. The reasons for their reported estrangement in later years remain private, locked away in the quiet spaces of family history. This estrangement added a layer of complexity to Carol's grief, a silent sorrow that made Lucy's loss even more profound. As a mother, losing a child is an unimaginable pain, And for Carol, coming so soon after Walter's death, it was a wound that cut deep. The proximity of these losses, Walter in 2000 and Lucy in 2003, cast a shadow over her final days, underscoring the fragility of life and the weight of familial bonds. Carol's own death came on July 20th, 2003, at the age of 78 in Manhattan, the city that had been the backdrop for her entire life. The cause was a brain aneurysm, a sudden and unforgiving end to a journey that had spanned nearly 8 decades. Her passing in the heart of Manhattan, where she was born and had built her career, was a fitting close to a life that had been inseparable from the city's energy and spirit. The aneurysm struck swiftly, cutting short a life that had been filled with complexity and achievement. Carol's death marked the end of a narrative that had encompassed foster care, high-profile marriages, a multifaceted career, and a network of influential friendships. She left behind a legacy that was as vibrant as the city itself, carried forward by those who survived her. And that's all for today's video. Don't forget to leave a like, comment your thoughts, and subscribe so you'll always be in the loop. Thanks for watching.